So we'll get started. Is this on? No, the green light's on, so but you're saying you can't hear?
Can you hear me? No?
No, so
Okay.
that, I know that happened with the city council meeting where, oh, there it is.
Happened, yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Please be sure to turn on your microphones prior to speaking to allow the audience and home viewers to be able to hear your questions and discussion. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. The time is 7:00 p.m. This is a meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. And could you please, Terry, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Holliday,
Here.
Ms. O'Donnell,
Here.
Mr. Roberts,
Here.
Mr. Shepherd,
Here?
Ms. Urban,
Oh,
Mr. Weiss, and Mr. Hayes.
here. And maybe before we proceed, we'll just ensure that Angela is there. I know it's her intention. And Kate explained the process well. And if I know if she loses connection, she can call right back. So maybe a switch.
Yes, for the public clarification, we do have a member of the Historic Preservation Commission remoting in via phone. So you may hear someone speaking.
So we'll wait a moment just to see what the resolution is there.
She's gonna, Angela's gonna hang up and call back because she's connected, but not to the PA system.
Ah, okay.
Angela, can you hear us?
Yeah, okay. So to clarify, so Angela, if I understand correctly, can hear us, but her call-in is not connected to the PA system, so we can't hear her, but she will text Kate, is that right? Yeah, okay. We did this once before, and it worked all right. Thank you for everyone for your resilience with the technology. So are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, thank you. So the next section is approval of minutes of the previous meeting. And before we proceed with that, I have a question, which is the scenario of revised minutes, which is, and where it says previous approval not valid. It doesn't say why it's not valid.
Yes, there were two separate scenarios going on here. The first scenario is that when we previously approved these minutes 2 months ago, I think it was, there was a motion made on the first set of minutes, but not the next two. So there actually has to be a motion on each date for minutes in order for that final roll call to be valid and the minutes to be approved. And then it says revised simply because these were still from our backlog of minutes when myself and other staff members were filling in, but it wasn't the format that has been fine-tuned over the past 20 years. So we formatted them as they usually are instead of as staff members were trying to do when Terry was out of the office.
So the revision is just formatting?
I believe it's just formatting. Terry, do you have any additional comments?
There might have been some substantial changes to this December meeting. Just some additions, not like major changes to what you guys had changed.
Okay, so I have two other questions related in terms of process. One is, I'm not aware of scenarios where we're asked to approve minutes that are in draft, like partial form, where there's a sense that they're still going to be worked on.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, please.
Well, we had, this was a scenario in which one staff member was out of the office on medical leave, and so other staff members who didn't have that experience completing minutes in the format for the Historic Preservation Commission were doing minutes and had thought that they were mostly complete, but they could certainly have been improved upon. And so that was the scenario where they were presented to you all as drafted minutes, but then they weren't up to snuff.
Yeah,
essentially.
it's an awkward situation, so maybe in the future we'll just agree that we don't get them until it's met that standard for approval.
Yes, and I think this was just a case in which someone was out of the office for an extended period of time, and we were attempting to keep up with workloads.
So then then my other question has to do, I'm sorry to start this way, but it's not obviously a straightforward process for us. I did look at the first set, and the first thing that I noticed was something that to me seemed like a very substantial change in the minutes. And so as we move to approve, do we move to approve if we have a concern like that and then it gets addressed in the discussion? Or do we even foreclose the moving to approve? Does that make sense?
You would move to approve, but then you would proceed as you usually do in saying, like, I have X amendments, I have X comments, I want this revised. And then the final vote would be like the minutes are approved as corrected or as revised instead of as written. If you move to approve and have no comments, then it would be the minutes are approved as written. If you move to approve, but then you discuss amongst yourselves that motion and say, I want to edit page 1, paragraph 3, line whatever, then it would be the minutes are approved as amended, revised, et cetera.
And last question, I promise. Can we be in a situation where we say, like, we don't actually ultimately then move to approve tonight because we want more?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, perfect. I was thinking that, but I'm checking because you know this intimately.
There would be 3 scenarios. You move to approve as written, move to approve as amended, or you do not approve.
Okay, thank you very much. So the minutes for revised minutes of August 8th, 2025, regular meeting, previous approval not valid for the reasons mentioned. And I know that in that meeting, there was an earlier date, so that makes perfect sense. So they're available for approval. Is there a motion to approve?
I would move we approve those minutes.
Thank you very much. Trent, is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Laura. So do any members of the commission have any corrections or amendments to make to the minutes?
Yes.
Dennis, please.
I think you might have misspoken, and when you read the minutes, I think you said August 8th, but it's August 6th.
Sorry.
Has that happened, perhaps? If it hasn't, I'd like to just make sure it's August 6th.
That's funny because I know one of the edits was August 8th, so I was speaking from memory from the original, not from what's there. So I'm going to say it again. The minutes from the, August 8th, 2020, August 6th, 2025, regular meeting, revised minutes. I'm sorry, is there a motion to approve?
I'll approve, I move that we approve
Thank
the
you.
minutes of August
6th.
6th, 2025.
I'll
Thank you.
second the
Thank you
motion
very
that-
much. Now, do any members of the commission have any corrections or amendments to make to the minutes, revised minutes of August 6, 2025?
Oh,
I do. On page 1, there is, under written communications, there are 3 lines that state that Chair Urban noted that Phyllis Williams sent to the Historic Preservation Commission members an email regarding Section 106 for the Urbana Civic Center. In the communication, the Preservation and Conservation Association, PACA, provided their recommendation position on the matter. I would recommend that this be struck from Section D under written communications, as during that meeting, if you listen to the recording, this does not occur during the section under written communications, and in fact, this was not included in our packet as written communication, and therefore should not be included under Section D. The point where this was mentioned in the meeting was the very, 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 very last thing in the meeting, in which our chair noted that an email had been received that day and that there would be further discussion at a future meeting, which is not at all the same thing as including it under written communications in Section D. And I think given everything that's been happening, it's important to get that pretty clear.
Can I clarify if you want it moved to the end or struck entirely?
I think I would strike it entirely.
Any other discussion? That was the first thing that I noticed, was that I didn't recall it being that way. And so,
That was the part.
yeah, I mean, just looking at that, but, I mean, there were other, Kate's explanation is helpful, and I know that, like in the last set of minutes that you did, the level of detail is phenomenal, so I don't know.
Clarify that they're usually a joint effort among multiple staff people to produce transcriptions, minutes, notes, et cetera, and then they get reviewed as a last step. So it's not only it's a multiple people's effort.
Thank you to all of you. It's a huge amount of work. I know. Any other discussion then in those? Does anyone, okay, so then we vote on this. All members in favor of approving the minutes as amended? Please say yes.
Aye.
Yes.
yes.
Okay, all members opposed, please say no. Okay, thank you. So the revised minutes of August 6th are approved as amended. Sorry, I've stirred this up. I feel a little bit out of it at the moment. Sorry about this. this over. There we are. Okay, so the minutes, revised minutes of December 3, 2025, regular meeting, which were previous approval was not valid. So is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Do any members of the commission have any corrections or amendments to make to the minutes?
I don't, but I am conscious that these revisions to the minutes are really, really substantial. And so maybe this is an item for discussion in the future, but if there is this major of a revision of minutes that we feel like we've approved and it comes this long after the meeting, it might be useful to have track changes on these minutes so that we can actually see what's been changed and help us say, oh yeah, that's right. Oh, wait, no, why has that been inserted there? It really helps a lot with the transparency of the editing process for something coming so long, especially because, there's only so much time that people have to go back and watch these meetings for the second or third time to make sure things are correct. And actually, I take it back, I do have one small revision, which is just to correct the spelling of two of my students' names that appear on page 5. One is Dale Mize, M-I-Z-E, and the other is Kay Lee, which is K-E and L-I.
Any other discussion, remarks?
Is that on page 5?
Yes, page 5 of the December 3rd, 2025.
Dale.
Dale Mize, M-I-Z-E.
Z.
M-I-Z as in zebra.
Oh,
E. And then Kay Lee is K-E.
Instead of K-A-Y.
Yeah. And then the last name is Lee, L-I.
Okay.
L-Y.
L-I as in indigo. Making things up. Yeah, thank you.
So K-E-Y and then L-I?
Just K-E. Yeah. Nope, that's okay. Thank you.
Sometimes it's hard to read this.
100%.
And I do the best I can.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Can I ask what prompted the revision of these minutes? Why we redid them? The language in it?
My impression was that it was to be more accurate to how we have done meetings minutes in the past. There certainly was no intention to be misleading or non-transparent. That was not our intention, but we hear your comments loud and clear.
Are we going back on other ones farther in the past too, or
We
kind of
had
done with
a
this?
backlog of things that we are making our way through. It is my understanding that these will be the last of the list that we're getting through for HPC.
Okay.
Terry, is that correct?
I was out on medical leave,
I
and
remember that, yeah.
someone else had done the minutes, and since they weren't valid because there was no motion or second on the minutes, I thought I would go back and add
Right.
more detail to them, is all it is. It's not, I didn't add anything that wasn't said or
Yeah.
mentioned in the meeting.
Okay. So it's basically because the first set was lacking.
It was vague,
Yeah.
yeah, it was general.
Okay, all right, that explains it, thank you.
So I have a question for the commissioners as part of discussion. Given how substantial the changes are, it felt very different to me in looking through them and saying, wait, does that, we're always asked to see, do the minutes seem to correspond with our recollection of the event? Does anybody, and knowing that it's recorded, does anybody feel that they want more time to reflect on that before we approve them? If not, no problem. I'm just putting it out there as an open question. No?
No.
Okay. So given that, all members in favor of approving the minutes, revised minutes of December 3rd, 2025, as amended with the names, spellings changed? All members in favor, please say yes.
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 All members opposed, please say no. Okay, so the revised minutes are approved as corrected. And then third, the minutes of June 3rd, 2026, regular meeting are available for approval. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Thank you, Laura. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll do the seconding.
Thank you, Dennis. Do any members of the commission have any corrections or amendments to make to the minutes? I had I had actually three. Two are small and one is a point of clarification, simply under audience participation. So section E, this is on page 2 of those minutes or page 19 of the packet. The third line there says Board of Trustee, should be Board of Trustees, sorry. But, so that was one. And then on page 27 of the packet and page 10 of the minutes, in the second new paragraph that begins, Mr. Hayes stated, the second line for the bottom, the final sentence is, however, he stated Miss Williams, it should be Williams apostrophe S as opposed to William, right? Family name is with as an S on it. So that's the first part. But as I'm making that correction, I'm also about to ask you to strike that because I actually didn't name Miss Williams. I said the testimony, and this is a quote, I looked it up just to be sure. The testimony that we heard is that it was hugely successful. If you wanted to have an event there, you had to reserve a year in advance. And the testimony to which I was referring was MTD. It was from a representative of MTD that was at the city council meeting at which Kate Holliday and I had given a presentation the month before. So I think it's important to clarify that wasn't coming from the nomination, but that it was actually coming from MTD. Any other corrections or discussion?
I've got a question, and that we had another meeting in December, is that right? The December 18th one, because in these June minutes, we're talking about the December 18th minutes. What's happened to it there? What's that? Does that make it?
Yeah, I believe we had a February 18th special meeting. Maybe it should be February.
Well, I'm not sure what that is. This is in this minutes we're looking at right now, the June 3rd minutes.
What page?
It's on the first page under B, changes to the agenda.
Oh, yeah, I missed that. Yeah, it's the first line there. Ms. Himlick noted that the minutes of the December 18, 2025 regular meeting were not ready.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll change that. It's meant to be February.
it's February's one.
I believe so. Or maybe it was meant to be December.
Well, I don't know.
We'll verify.
Maybe it's,
Well, it's probably December 6th meeting, because
Oh.
this was on the agenda last time too, and we didn't approve it because they weren't ready yet. I think it was pushed off. I think it was 18th. Oh,
December 3?
What?
We're having number issues.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I would suggest we not approve these minutes until we figure out what it,
December 3, not,
It's-
yeah, it was August 6th.
It is
I'm
the
getting my-
December 3rd meeting,
Okay.
okay.
because I was working on them at that time, and I didn't have them finished.
Okay.
Adding the stuff,
All right.
adding the details that were actually talked about.
Okay, so I'd like then to ask that we change that, the 18th to the 3rd on these. Okay, all right.
And then I have a question. This isn't a correction, and so you can tell me if it's out of order to ask this question now. There was something that happened in that meeting I didn't understand, and it's recorded in the meeting as I heard it and didn't understand it. I still don't understand it. So I don't know if it was simply an error when it happened. So this is on page 30 of the packet, page 13 in the minutes. It's I believe, the third new paragraph. Mr. Hayes moved that. So in our procedure, Mr. Roberts seconded the motion, and then Mr. Hayes asked for clarifications on whether his motion should be more detailed. Then Ms. Jovine called a point of order. She said the motion needs a second before discussing the motion. Mr. Roberts stated that he seconded the motion. Was it simply that you, Olivia, didn't hear him, or was there something in there about how I framed my question that undid that?
The second stands, but the discussion should be on the motion, not as part of, like, it should just be a clean second. So someone makes a motion, then someone seconds, and then the motion is discussed by the motion maker, and then people are welcome to chime in and add to that discussion. So that was the point of order. I think it was, the second was valid. It was just that we should make sure we're following the procedure for the discussion portion of the motion.
That's helpful. So it was on the fact that at that point, my question was about the motion itself. Is that right?
Yes, and
Yeah,
I
okay.
think I think it's sort of a Robert's Rules of Order procedural point of order.
Yeah.
That was my intent, at least. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other corrections, amendments, discussion on the minutes? But you're saying you think that we should hold on?
Now that we seem to know that it's what the date in December was, I'm ready to go ahead with it. I thought
Okay.
it was just total confusion, but, so I'm not against approving them.
Got it, okay. So all members in favor, please, of approving the minutes, please say yes.
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 All members opposed, please say no. So the minutes are approved as corrected. So the next section, in the script, it's public input, but it's not on the agenda.
We do have the agenda for, we have written approval of previous minutes, written communications, and then audience participation.
Got it.
That, it was on the agenda, it's written communications and then audience participation.
Right, okay, so we'll follow with written communications then.
And we do have one written communication, which you all had a copy of in your packet. This is a follow-up from a previous written communication we'd received several months ago, one of my first meetings here. This is a concerned citizen with concerns about Woodlawn Cemetery at 1803 North Kohler Avenue. Again, this is an anonymous mailing to the Historic Preservation Commission, concerned about the state of Woodlawn Cemetery and the height of the grass and repairs being made to the cemetery itself. The cemetery is not within city limits, so neither city staff or the commission necessarily have direct jurisdiction here. This person's anonymous, so if I hope they're listening, and please reach out to planning staff, and we'll try to get you in contact with some resources that maybe would be helpful for community organizing around cemeteries.
Yeah, I have no clue what the ownership of that cemetery is, if it's some kind of a for-profit or a not-for-profit, and maybe they're just on hard times, or I don't know. It's a sad situation, but nothing, not in our jurisdiction, like you said, yeah.
There is a formal ownership group for the cemetery that's listed on their webpage. And again, if someone is listening, the State Historic Preservation Office does have a staff member that is supposed to be dedicated to historic cemeteries. And so I would encourage someone to reach out to that particular staff member that is listed on the State Historic Preservation Office's webpage for that kind of assistance in community organizing around cleanups.
Any other discussion? Thank you for that. Yeah, they didn't give us a way to communicate back with them. Kate, if you have a moment to take a look and see who does own it, or maybe that's beyond our scope. I
No,
mean, simply,
That's a great question. I don't remember off the top of my head who the owner was, but I know when we received the first time it was a letter, this time it's a postcard. Then when we received the first letter, I did find a number and an email for the owner, and was able to speak with a staff member about, hey, we received this letter, here's what it's about, would you please make sure that the issue is heard and being considered. So I have transmitted previous communication about the cemetery to the actual owner, but off the top of my head, I don't remember who that was.
yeah, okay, thank you for that. I mean, it's as far as we can go. It's outside of our scope and our territory, so. So the next section, audience participation. Does anyone in the audience want to address the Historic Preservation Commission on any topic? No, okay. Continued public hearings. There are no continued public hearings. And then unfinished old business. There's no old business. New public hearings. There are no new public hearings. New business. There is no new business. Monitoring of historic properties. Is there any monitoring to report on existing historic properties by commission members, knowing that you each have a domain? I don't. Okay, thank you. Staff report.
We do have a staff report that was in your packet and is also in paper copies at the back. This is an update on staff work to do an audit of the historic surveys that are available, that have been stored over since the founding of the commission. Staff are working to consolidate, update, and audit these historic surveys. A lot of this is grunt data management of where files live, how they live in file structures, moving thousands of documents around. That's a lot of what this is entailing. We're also working to merge existing spreadsheets, say a spreadsheet from 2003 with one from 2019, just so we know we're best tracking all of this, and so it can be best used. We're also working on what categories we want to ask questions of the data and then spatializing that, just to better understand what we have, what records exist, to ask more informed questions going forward. This would be a core bedrock of any sort of preservation plan. This has to happen to get us into a good spot to be able to do that. And then we have done an initial spatial join, so a first step in getting this into something like a geographic information system, a GIS layer, that would be a workable data analytics tool. And then these categories and what data is being tracked in the spreadsheet. These are the current questions, if you will, or columns or categories of data tracking. Simply location, has it been surveyed? Is it part of the top 100 list that was done several years ago? Is it on the demolition delay ordinance? Is it on that list? What's the current land use? When was it constructed? These sorts of things. Is it a district? Is it a landmark? What's its National Register status? So if anyone has any additions they'd like to make, we're open to that.
Any discussion, comments?
So the forms, which I don't think I ever actually filled out for one of the forms, but under previous director, many students filled out forms evaluating properties, and they all included, if possible, floor plans and photographs. And I'm wondering, are you finding photographs? They didn't mention photographs or imagery here on your list.
Yes, so we have scans of most of the surveys. There is still one drawer of paper that we'll get to as part of this, but we do have scans of most of everything. So they currently are sort of in one big folder. I would like them to live in a surveys folder, but then also in address folders where, you know, instead of just searching a big giant repository, you can just go to that address. So if I find things that are associated with, I don't know, you know, this address, then it's all getting moved into a one location for that property. So all of the surveys, well, most of the surveys are scanned, and those do include a picture that's been stapled or pasted to that survey itself. I have not found a high degree of plans, but there are pictures that yes.
So you may not want to know this, but at one point, the county assessor's office, the township's office, was disposing of file cards that were collected in on their shelves. It was their record of all the many houses and photographs of the house, but all the cards were in the database, not by address, but by their property tax number, which to use them is very difficult for a person who's not going to spend hours, you know, looking up individual tax numbers to find out where that property is. But I have those boxes, and I'm wondering, does the Historic Preservation Commission want to be burdened by the repository of such a collection, which might actually be very valuable historically? And I saved them because at that time I was making a survey of East Urbana, because East Urbana had never really been surveyed, and I wanted to complete the survey. So I took pictures of every house in East Urbana, and I wanted to compare them to these records that were dated more like, I don't know, 1992 or something like that. I mean, this could become an important, a significant, perhaps, digital archive. But, so anyways, I have these files, and it would require probably a grant to process them. But rather than just tossing them in the trash, I was thinking, should we try to save them and incorporate them somehow in the future?
You go. Ladies first.
Wait, hang on, wait, did you want to respond? The question was asked to you, but
Well,
would you
I
like to
think-
respond, or do you want to listen to?
I mean, I think this is a valuable discussion, because certainly assessor's cards would be a wonderful resource to have for any sort of historic property research. I do wonder if maybe the Champaign County Archives at the Urbana Free Library, since they're trained archivists, I do not have a master's degree in archival sciences,
Right.
but since those individuals have librarian, masters of library science, masters of archival sciences, they might be better equipped to archive those in an appropriate and up-to-date way.
I'm totally open to hear other comments, of course.
I was just going to ask if you'd ever inquired at the library archives about whether they're interested in them.
I don't remember if I did at the time or not, but it would have been about 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I kind of think they might be. I don't, just a feeling.
Well, I think it'd be a great thing. Kate?
So I would just say that those types of records are highly valued by local history collections. Typically, the city of New Orleans has a collections like that was transferred to a museum collecting archive institution. City of New York has those kind of surveys that have been transferred to the municipal archives. And it's very, very common for those records to go directly to a publicly accessible archive. So I would strongly recommend reaching out to the library. And if by any chance they said no, like, don't put them in the garbage.
Still hold on to
Someone
them.
someone will
Somebody-
take them.
Okay.
Yep, yeah.
I commend you for keeping them out of the dumpster.
Yeah, I
years
thought I was
ago.
rather amazed, and they were going to throw them out, and I thought, well, gee, shouldn't do that. I'll just take them. So, but I can't. I was going to use them, but I just never had time to do all that. So I still have them, and somebody someday will value them, I hope.
Great discussion. Kate, in that work, do you have the sufficient support you need to undertake this work? I mean, as you're
Yes,
saying, it's a lot.
No, it is a
And-
lot, but it is a joint effort, and then we're hoping to get outside support as well, starting in August.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, and thank you for the report.
And
Anything
I'd
to
like
add?
to comment that if I went back a couple years, I don't know if it was just a rumor, if it was actually stated, but I don't believe it was historic preservation, and our commission was a priority for the city administration and the city budget, and I find it refreshing that we're getting a little more attention now. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is the study session, and there are 3 topics here, starting with conversation with Director of Community Development Services. So Olivia, I invite you to the table.
Okay, hello everyone. Good evening. So I'm hoping I don't want to take too much time away from the other study sessions that we have on the agenda tonight, because that's where the majority of the content is going to be. But I just wanted to make sure that we had time tonight to take a moment and just acknowledge and make space for the events that have happened over the past couple weeks as it pertains to the Civic Center and the Civic Center case, and just ensure that we have time to address in conversation tonight any remaining concerns or opportunities to just have a conversation. I do want to express that it is a priority for me and for this department that we maintain a good working relationship, and we're really looking forward to continuing working with this commission moving forward. And specifically on Section 106 and refining that process and making sure that we're moving forward appropriately and correctly and through the best possible procedural steps, which will be discussed more in the subsequent study session. But with that said, I did want to take an opportunity to thank Ms. Williams, Winter Williams, for her application. It was very thorough and very well received. What I shared with you this evening is actually something we typically keep as an internal document. This is not like shared with commissions and previous. It exists for the Historic Preservation Commission, the Plan Commission, and also the Zoning Board of Appeals. But I did want to share a little bit of context for how the case was managed, and then just ensure that we're all on the same page and answer any questions procedurally in terms of case management, should that be of interest to the board this evening. And then again, ensuring that we have time to talk as needed. So just with that said, I'll just go into the case schedule, which is what you have before you. So as discussed, Ms. Winter Williams' application was received and paid for and complete on April 27th. So if you look at the highlighted fields, that puts us at the application deadline would be right before April 29th. So that triggers the June 3rd commission meeting, which is when the case was brought to Historic Preservation Commission. And I just for awareness, if you work right, or if you work your way across the page here, you see all the interim steps that will then bring you to that June 3rd date. And so that includes submittal of of the legal ad to the News Gazette, neighbor mailings, posting a sign, making sure that everything is published in the paper, then drafting the memo and preparing exhibits, and then also ensuring that there are multiple stages of review with the principal planner, the director, and then also hitting that packet deadline. We try to send it out the Friday before a meeting so that commissioner members have the weekend to review all the materials and then additional time over the week as they have available. And then that also brings us straight into our committee of the whole and council schedule. So the turnaround time from June 3rd to June 15th is certainly tight, but it's standardized. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention and share that with you all this evening. It was, something that became apparent that there was a little bit of, I think we hadn't shared the details of our internal case schedule to this level of detail, and it is something that we have procedurally established. And initially, we thought we could even potentially fit our Section 106 procedures or revised procedures into this 35-day case schedule, but as we'll discuss later this evening, I don't know that that's totally feasible. But regardless, this is in an effort to be transparent in terms of our internal process and workflows. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that specifically, or just have a conversation about any outstanding concerns or areas of discussion that you'd like to bring forward. I'm certainly listening. I know that our staff is certainly listening as well. And we are really looking forward to having continued conversation on Section 106, but also just staff and commission communication procedures moving forward.
Thank you. Kate, I see your hand is up.
I have a quick question. So say a case is brought to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting on June 3rd. Does the commission have, say, in a future case, an option to continue the case to provide more time for there to be additional conversation?
Yes, actually. So if it is brought to the June 3rd meeting, the commission has the decision to hold it for discussion, actually. It doesn't have to be approved or, I guess, rejected by vote that same night. I think that there's the only parameter, however, is that the zoning ordinance specifically says that I should look at the exact wording, but there is a 60-day from public hearing requirement, which is something that we would need to consider should a case be held for further discussion. I don't know that it's impossible. It's just something that we would need to be mindful of. I believe that would be on page, let me check. I think it's on 194, yeah, oh. Right, so the recommendation, so it's on page 194 of the ordinance. And it says, this is section, this is under Historic Preservation Commission Authority. And then it's 1B. Said recommendation shall be forwarded to the Urbana City Council for consideration at the City Council meeting occurring within 60 days following the date of the close of the public hearing. So if it's the close of the public hearing, then actually I think we would be okay if we had ensured that it was a continued public hearing. Yeah.
So I feel like that's important advice to commission for staff to remind the commission going forward that they don't actually have to vote at the first meeting that the nomination comes to, and that they do have the ability to continue so that there's more time to consider and gather information and allow additional public participation in the process if it's warranted.
And maybe Kate could answer it, or maybe Olivia could. Has Section 106 been around for a long time? I don't remember hearing much of anything about it until this year. Can you tell me the history of it?
I actually do not have the technical background to tell you the history, but I can tell you it has been around. I would defer to our commission members or maybe Kate Himmick as well.
Well, then it originates the National Historic Preservation Act, which was first passed in 1966. And then I believe,
Oh, is your mic
Am
on?
I-
They can't hear in the back.
am I on? Can you hear me?
There we are.
Okay.
Okay.
National Historic Preservation Act, 1966, last amended 2016-ish. So that would have been the most recent amendment, and it originates within that federal act of, it's a federal review process that is required in all states, but it does get administrated through state SHPOs as part of a pass-through process. So it would be, there are multiple stakeholders or players involved. So the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation at the national level has some input. State SHPO offices have some role in that. And then consulting parties or concurring parties would be invited as stakeholders to share comments, to continue in this process as it proceeds through each steps phase of this process. And so when the commission would be invited as a consulting party, it would be as an expert local body for their municipality's historic and cultural character.
Yes, and I think it's so important. I'll just add, since this is a conversation, I'm a little off script here. I mean, truly this is just meant to be a conversation, but I do want to highlight the importance of how we now have qualified personnel on staff, and I was intentional about hiring that for our department because it's a need. It's a highly technical area, and there's a lot of regulations to navigate, and so I'm very happy that as of January this year, we've welcomed not only Kate Himmick, but another qualified personnel, which is a SHPO designated qualification, it's like professional qualification. And so we're fortunate to have 2 new members to the team who have that training and expertise. And we'll continue to be supporting professional development to receive the appropriate training specifically for Section 106. And so we've identified several opportunities that are actually coming available in September of this year. So we'll be taking those trainings. They're not the most affordable, so we will be thoughtful about who has access to that, but I think there's also an opportunity potentially for the chair of the commission to take the training as well, should they be interested.
Add one more thing, just that, to your point, Trent, that maybe it's not a super familiar process because it's triggered when there are federal dollars involved. And so if it's a local
true.
project, then you don't do Section 106. Federal grants and federal properties.
Or federal permitting as well, federal money or permitting. So that, no, it's not super common, to your point.
That's why I haven't heard a lot about this, because it just hasn't come up much, if at all. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification because, and I think maybe the public will too, because when we talk about Section 106, it seems amorphous. It's like, what's it attached to? What initiates it? What does it mean? You know, and so it's a statute within the federal law for historic preservation. Is that a summary? That's appropriate?
Yes, it's within the 1966 National Historic Preservation Act. Kate described it really perfectly. And like the way you typically see it, and this is not exclusive at all, but the way you typically see it is when departments of transportation, so state departments of transportation, are always doing Section 106 review. Local departments of transportation are always doing it because they thrive on federal grants and federal budget dollars, and almost all of their projects involve some kind of Section 106 review and other types of federal review for how they are engaging the public and assessing the impact of their work.
Other questions or comments? I have some. I appreciate, I didn't know when I saw this on the agenda, I didn't know what exactly it would entail. But I imagined it might be about the past few weeks or months, which have been really challenging. And So in reflecting after we got the agenda, I've been doing a little bit of reflecting on what I would want to know some more about. And one of the big topics has to do with the role of city staff members communicating, I'm going to say not on behalf of the commission, but I'm going to say in place of the commission. And I say that because when I saw the letter sent to the SHPO saying that the Historic Preservation Commission as a consulting party disagreed with their assessment that the Urbana Civic Center was merited nomination, I was really shocked by that because I completely disagreed with that, but I was never consulted about that. I was never asked about that. And so in trying to understand how or why that would have happened, I now have the comparable of things. I brought this along, like Illinois Department of Transportation's letter, which was shared with us. This is from last October, but this is about the work being done, the streetscapes. And off we went, and we were asked to give input. We gave input, and it was valuable. So to me, it remains astonishing that a process, this Section 106 process for the Urbana Civic Center is considered somehow to have unfolded correctly when literally we weren't given an opportunity to weigh in. So I have some questions about that. And one of them has to do with also sitting in this room with city council and not being asked, well, sort of, where you were basically, you and Evan were sitting in and were speaking on behalf of the commission. But the way that you phrased one of your answers implied that you're a political appointee, you have a certain role to play. So I have a lot of questions about that and how this should have played out, why it didn't play out that way. I mean, I have some very, very specific questions, but I'll hold them, as we have our discussion.
Yes, I definitely appreciate that, and I do want to reiterate and share that I think, without a doubt, I can't speak to communication that happened before my time at the city or our current staff's time at the city, but it is clear that more robust conversations certainly would have benefited the process. There's no shadow of a doubt that discussion would have brought a lot of value to the process and to the commission's ability to sort of discuss amongst themselves. And so I completely acknowledge that there was a need for that.
So one question that I have, because in my view, the process isn't complete. I mean, wasn't the process wasn't followed. That's my view of it, but that's just my opinion. I get that. But I'm really concerned about, well, this is one of my questions. I'm concerned about the fact that it appears from the timeline that we could have been invited to participate, we could have been asked, and we weren't. And when you look at the timeline, it gets pretty strange. So one of my questions has to do with your role, you specifically,
Okay.
but also it has to do with our city staff generally speaking, because I've always thought of the role of city staff is to help the commission do its best work, informing us of opportunities, doing the research that can, like clerks at, in the court, right, who are helping justices understand the terrain, understand their roles and responsibilities. So the fact that we were not invited, that it would hang on, well, but somebody got an email, but what? There's so many ways to communicate. That's really concerning to me. So I'm going to ask a really pointed question, which is, in your role as somebody who, as you've said, you're politically appointed, have you, or to your knowledge, have any city staff members ever been asked to withhold information from us, to edit information, to sculpt what we would be seeing and reading and understanding in order to do our work well. That's, I know it's a blunt question, but it's something that I'm asking because it's been very much on my mind, and I really am hoping for transparency to really understand, because it looks like that's not the case.
Yes, so thank you. I appreciate, we can have challenging conversations, so I appreciate that. And I also agree the past few weeks and months have been challenging specifically around this topic. Since my time with the city, have not been asked to do that. I can only share and operate with the information and the resources that are available to me. We are also a new team, so there are moments where we are coming into information that we did not have previously, but I've not been directed in any way from a leadership perspective. And I do think it is important to clarify, and I think should warrant specific clarification in this context is that I personally, in my role, cannot operate exactly as staff can operate. So the recommendation came from the planning division, which happens to be within my department. I serve at the pleasure of the mayor and the city council. I am limited to a 2-year term. I can be reappointed, of course. So I do think that comes with certain realities in terms of my involvement in the process. And when I responded to Council Member Evans' question, I was responding as the director of the department. And given the scenario that was presented to us at that time, weighing a variety of different pieces of data, I've been conflicted through this process, and I remain conflicted through the process. But given what I had in front of me at that time, I personally, as the director, I don't know that I would have. I responded authentically for my position.
I hear you. So I have a question. I have 2 questions at the same time, which sometimes happens. So a quick follow-up to the first question, the one that I just asked, was: have you felt pressured to incline it in a certain way by anybody in the city administration or otherwise? I mean, at MTD, for example?
No, I don't think I've felt pressured. I also think that the way that I choose to run my department is with integrity and honesty, and that includes being transparent with information. I am here to serve the people of Urbana. We are a city government, and we have a responsibility to the taxpayers and our citizens. And everything that we do is, of course, the vast majority, of course, is publicly accessible and through the Freedom of Information Act. So I never want to be in a position where I feel pressured. I think that the reality of this role is that there are usually points of conflict and tension where there are outcomes that are positive and scenarios that are positive in both directions, and sometimes we do have to make really challenging calls. So I don't think that, I don't take that lightly, and I appreciate that it can be conflicting. But it is something that I'm hoping to navigate as best as I can, and also I really want to support and empower my staff to always make recommendations that are technically appropriate, always take all information into consideration, and I think that starts with a staff culture that's supportive and embraces, integrity in the decision making we will be engaging with.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's a difficult situation. I have a second question, but I want to defer to any of my colleagues if they have questions now.
Yes, and I did want to also respond to one of your previous points, which is in terms of clarifying the role of the Commission secretary. I think that warrants discussion and codification, and actually is something that we're going to be hopefully addressing with you all through bylaws revisions. And so we're going to talk about that. I think we're going to introduce that tonight, and it'll be a working discussion moving forward. But specifically clarifying the role of the Historic Preservation Commission Secretary and specifically clarifying expectations for communication so that in any future situation, there is no ambiguity as to who, as to what that staff person, the position that staff person is put in. So that's
Really helpful,
definitely
yeah.
something that I believe we've identified as an immediate need, and then I'm sure we'll continue refining that as it goes forward.
Thank you. So Trent, Kate had her, Angela, okay, Angela's texting in here. Amazing.
So just as a reminder, our Chair, Angela Urban, is listening but cannot speak because of technical difficulties. So she's texted me a few things that she'd like to add to the conversation. And I think specifically in reference to the meeting schedule that was brought up earlier, her concern was that minutes and YouTube videos are not publicly available within that short time frame. And it's an additional challenge as council members are not able to fully grasp the context of what's happening in the commission when those minutes and recordings are not available. And particularly, it did not have available the June 15th meeting. At the June 15th meeting, the larger context that we were excluded from the Section 106 conversation. I think that's referring to the recordings of our February meeting. The next comment is a question about where in the zoning ordinance does it state how the city council makes their decision based on commission recommendation. I think that there is a statement to council that they don't have to base their vote on findings of fact.
Okay, so I'll thank you, Angela, for your questions. Apologies for the technical difficulties this evening. So to answer the first question, I'll certainly get, I'd like to clarify or follow up with our IT department because it's my understanding that there's a live stream link made available, which is then transitioned to a permanent YouTube video. So I'd like to clarify for the commissioners and the public how long that live stream link can be accessed before it's transitioned to ensure that there's no confusion there. So thank you for that question. And then your second question was about the zoning ordinance. So just a minute, please. I don't have my fully annotated version in front of me. It's under, so it's page 197 under City Council Authority. And I can read it if that's helpful. Yeah, so if the City Council determines that the proposed historic landmark should be designated, it shall do so by enacting an ordinance by majority vote of alderpersons then holding office. In the event of a tie, the mayor may cast the deciding vote. No application relating to the same property, that was section A, then section B is no application relating to the same property may be filed during the 12-month following such a denial by the Urbana City Council. And then it goes on to landmark status recorded, and then amendment of designation. So again, that's on section or page 197 of the zoning ordinance. And if you compare that back to the section under Historic Preservation Commission authority, that section specifically identifies that the commission must find that the property conforms to one or more criteria set forth in the appropriate section of the ordinance. So that interpretation was also confirmed with the city attorney as well. So thank you for those questions.
Other questions or comments before Trent? You were next, yeah. And then Dennis.
Who is the secretary? Is it Terry or is it someone else?
Yes, thank you. So Kate Himmick is the secretary of the Plan Commission. I was serving in an interim capacity, which certainly doesn't help in terms of wearing multiple hats and that is something that I think that is another point of these past few months have not been helped by the fact that we've been incredibly short-staffed and also onboarding new people. So moving forward, will be speaking to you as the director of the department. Evan Alvarez is our principal planner, who you know, and then Kate is our planner one and is also serving as the Historic Preservation Commission secretary. And then Aimee Rusai, who you've met briefly, he's come to previous commission meetings. He's a planner too, and he's going to be serving as the secretary of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And Terry is our recording secretary. So Terry keeps us organized and is helps with communication as it relates to meeting schedules and the literal recording of the meeting minutes themselves.
Thank you for that complete explanation.
Yes, of course.
Well, okay, so first I'd like to thank the Deputy Chair for bringing forth some very interesting questions tonight relating to this process. When we talk about the role of the staff being somewhat influential in guiding the materials or the opinion of the HPC while we're making deliberations, I felt sort of that was happening to us, especially as individuals of us visited the site of the city, the Urbana Civic Center. We had our individual visits, you know, and we were shown the interior of the property, which was valuable to us. And we were given a long list of problems that the building had because it was outdated, which did not really address the substantial question of whether it was a valuable structure to be considered for nomination. And in that, the interior of a building in local landmarking is not the main concern of making it a valuable landmark, because we're looking pretty much as a preservationist about the outside. We, you know, if changes are made to the outside, requires a certificate of appropriateness. And so we're not talking about, you know, whether, you know, a room can be changed or the use of the room can be changed or if there needs to be an upgrade to the electrical system. But we were given mostly that information, and in our tour of the building didn't include even looking at the outside. So, of course, you know, I look at the outside because I'm thinking about its appropriateness in that sense. So I just thought that was sort of an interesting thing. Maybe staff was just trying to let us know that there were a lot of issues related to the building and whether it was useful to keep it or not. But and it's up to me as a commissioner to make up my opinion about the relevance of the information that we are shared. So I just felt that there wasn't really one positive thing that was mentioned during that tour, so I thought that was sort of an interesting thing for me to experience. And then I appreciate that the fact that when our minutes are given to us, they are in wonderfully precise detail. Generally, the level of detail in transcribing the conversations and representing them is, I think, really well done, and it's a very high standard, and really is valuable to the commission. Especially in going back and looking at our previous conversations. We have so many conversations over the last couple of months, it's hard to know what specifically was said, so I just wanted to validate that. And there might have been one other thing that I wanted to ask about. Oh, yes, it was about the when the city council makes the decision on a landmark, it has apparently, it apparently has a wider scope of consideration than the HPC, which is bringing the landmark nomination forward. And when we provide if we can provide the fact that there are numerous points which the nomination meets because there are 7 criteria which we're based on. So these are criteria of fact. And then the city council seems to have a criteria of an opinion. And so, like, how does that relate as far as like what the latitude of the council when it makes the determinations versus when a person says, well, in this instance, there are specific adopted rules that we're following, whether it be a landmark nomination or relating to any kind of planning case. And if the city council is not taking the advice of either our planning documents or statements of fact, what is the public's protection for making decisions based on fact rather than assumption or need?
Well, Mr. Roberts, thank you for that question. As a former city council member, I'm sure you're aware that council members are presented with a wide range of facts, and it's very possible for there to be multiple pieces of information that at some time can be in conflict with each other. And so the city councilors are responsible for, they're elected, so they're responsible for making decisions that serve their constituents and the city of Urbana, and they're presented with a wide range of information, and their authority is not limited to a certain section of the ordinance as a result. I do think that I think that the information that was presented in the memo and in the application, it was presented in its full scope and breadth, and so at least we can be confident that they were informed in their decision.
So at least we did our job as a commission.
Any other questions or comments? Or did you want to follow up with that?
No, just thank you all, and we really do appreciate the opportunity I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. If there's anything else that you'd like to discuss, my door is always open. I don't want to take too much time from the Section 106 study session, which is coming so soon.
I hear you, but I do want to, when I just asked that question, I do have a second question.
Please.
Sorry, I wasn't quite done. Is that okay? I mean, in terms of timing? Yeah, or did you, when I was asking that, I didn't mean to shut down did you have a question or comment?
I had one more
Okay,
comment
sorry.
from Angela that I actually shared to a certain extent. And Angela Urban states to that point that part of the issue is that facts were not fully provided. And with missing minutes, the lack of knowledge of the exclusion of the commission from the process and representation that the commission was included in the process. And so I do think, to Angela's question, this like vetting of how the case is presented is probably really important. And I understand that there is a 30-day window there that may make that challenging, but given that the case was presented differently than the commission itself saw the case, and I don't want to speak for the applicant, but it feels like there are potentially a lot of differences in the way that that case was viewed moving forward, and the facts surrounding the case shifted quite a bit as well. It presents a real challenge. And so I think to the question of the staff reports and the way that the case is presented, the way the options are presented to the commission and to council, those all shape potential actions. And the omission of participation of the commission in assessment of the building and its local meaning is a huge impact on the way that that case moves forward. So I'll stop there.
I'm to transition to my question, I want to add to that I know we're going to be reviewing this, and I really appreciate the opportunity to do that. It's been a while coming, these kinds of things. I do feel like I still don't understand why city staff would present decisions in place of the Historic Preservation Commission without consulting us, and that is what happened. And so even though I know we're going to be looking at it, I want to understand that because I feel like understanding that will help us know what we can do as we move forward. It'll help us identify. I don't know if I'll ever get the answers for that, because sometimes they're not forthcoming. There you are. But my other question had to do, it's a little bit broader, and it is actually about your role. It's also about the role of other people within the city administration. To what degree is Imagine Urbana, the comprehensive plan, something like, what is your relationship to Imagine Urbana in your work? And I'm asking that for a specific reason, but like, is it, because I know that Kevin Garcia took a lot of leadership in stewarding that forward. I had a lot of emails from him. I also know that we had a kind of push and pull. Angela, our chair, is very sensitive to that, because we would we would participate in the process, and like after a couple of rounds, none of the feedback provided by historic preservation commissioners was included. So there was some pushback on that. But from a practice question, is Imagine Urbana, the comprehensive plan, a guiding document for you and your work, or is it something separate from what you do?
Yeah, I view that as a guiding document for the work of our department. It's a 20-year plan, but I think plan is perhaps misleading because it really is a vision document. I understand that our former principal planner and the work of our, I think, strategic, I'm forgetting her exact title, but Andrea Rudy, who I'm sure you had exposure to through the process. One of their goals was to make the comprehensive plan more usable by implementing metrics and guidelines and a series of little moves and big moves that could be more easily tracked and measured against.
Yeah.
So we definitely take those into consideration. It can't be, just like with any document, it can't be the, well, I suppose with the exception of the zoning ordinance, which is not without its flaws. It was written in 1993. So it's definitely a guiding document. I can't take it to the letter of the law because it's not actually written very in a way that could be interpreted that way. But we are working through our interpretation of the comp plan to keep the vision aligned with those big moves and little moves.
So to try to bring this in a way to move to the next thing, just to share what I'm concerned about here, and that I would love to, for the discussion to continue well beyond this meeting, is that that's how I saw the Imagine Urbana for our commission, for me as a commissioner. I'm glad that you see it that way too. I see the mayor referring to it. I see city commissioners referring to it as if it's a guiding document. So to me, part of what has been troubling about this process is like, we have a role. We have done what we were asked to do. I really appreciated City Council Member Evans's remark at the City Council meeting that everyone on the commission has done exactly like what they were called upon to do in this process. Even as we were being villainized for doing that, right? People were villainizing this as obstructive, when in fact we were just doing exactly what we were supposed to do. And consistent with Imagine Urbana, one of the things we're asked to do is to collaborate with all of the other units of Urbana government, all the commissions, the city council, the mayor, et cetera, and the community members towards a holistic vision. And so the big ideas translated into the big moves, which translated into metrics. And so I went back as part of this process. I had this earlier, just because I felt like, did I overlook something? Did I forget something? And big idea number 4, Urbana embraces its cultural vibrancy and character. Objective 4.5, the city's historic architecture and features are used to enhance its eclectic character. That's one of the big ideas. And the barometers of success are increases in grant funding, increased community participation in workshop events and collaborative projects. And City Commissioner Evans said it wasn't only the Historic Preservation Commission that was excluded, he believes intentionally, but also the public from this specific discussion about MTD and the Civic Center. So Section 6 of Imagine Urbana, what are the big moves to achieve the city's big ideas? Big move 11, advance a clean and green community. And point 1114, encourage adaptive reuse and historic preservation of existing buildings that contribute to the city's architectural heritage. I mean, there it is. So it isn't just the commission that's asked to advocate for something. You're asked to advocate for something, and I know it's a careful balance, but so is the city council, so is the commission, so are all the other agencies. And then under little moves there, the associated, in terms of encouraging adaptive reuse, et cetera, associated metrics, one of the associated metrics is dollars invested in reuse/preservation projects. So I was glad that I remembered that correctly, but I'm really caught off guard by the sense that a group which is not a city agency, the MTD, which is county, I believe the trustees are appointed by the county commission, et cetera, had the basically by saying, if you do this one thing, we won't apply for a grant. And then the rhetoric of false oppositions, which I've articulated before, that our city council, our mayor, I will even say you didn't look to that and say, wait a minute, there's a holistic, when we kept saying there's a win-win-win, and Kate gave a presentation that actually illustrated a win-win-win-win-win. Nevertheless, it just felt like this agency and that one remark meant everything else fell by the wayside. So I put that out there because it's very confusing from a Historic Preservation Commission perspective and from my individual perspective when I'm asked to be effective and to manifest something, and I helped, contribute to which I helped contribute, as did so many in our community. And then for doing that one thing, nobody stood up for us except Chris Evans by saying, by the way, they just did the right thing. And he referred to Ms. Williams as well, doing exactly what she was meant to do. So as we go forward with these conversations, I'm really watching that. I'm really sensitive to that because as a citizen of Urbana, it has really profoundly affected how I feel about my community. The way I talk about my community to people in other places changed recently. I was very surprised by it. I didn't expect it. And the last thing I'll say on that front is that, and I'll be very blunt here, it felt to me, and again, this is my unique perspective. This is just my unique perspective. I take it. It felt like backroom dealing trumped everything. That's how it felt. That a deal that was made at some point, and I say this, and I'll say it again, I believe the best use for that site is as a transit hub maintained by MTD. I am a regular MTD user. But the fact that I said that, the fact that others said that, had absolutely, it didn't matter. But beyond me articulating that value, Imagine Urbana had nothing, had no legs, had no teeth, nothing, at any point in this discussion. So I'm really concerned about that. And I hope that you and your role, as you go forward with your care, will be mindful that I think we have a role. I think this is political. I think we have a role to play to support the vision of the community that was generated by the community. And that is, to many community members, is very confusing. Some view it one way, some view it another. But we have an accountability to that, I believe.
Thank you very much for those comments. I will mention, because it's part of my review process, it's a mandatory section of the council memos that the strategic goals are listed and described as they apply to the case. And we did specifically cite that section of the Imagine Urbana Comprehensive Plan. So I'm aware of that section as well.
Great.
And
yeah,
appreciate
thank you.
your,
Yeah, I know
your
you're aware of
attention
it.
to
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
That's it from me. So I know you've been in the hot seat for a bit here. So,
That's
you.
absolutely fine. I'm happy to
oh, sorry,
continue.
Dennis, one more? Yeah.
I'll just say that that there have been several people who were deeply involved in the vision of the downtown, its development, its historic nature, and appreciated trying to promote it and to conserve it in the past, who've served on both the Planning Commission and the HPC, and who are members of PACA, who have told me and my partner that they're done with Urbana because Urbana doesn't seem to care. It doesn't seem to have a real backbone to stand up for historic preservation, and they don't feel that they're effective anymore, and so they've just decided to step back and to retire from positions that they once held, and they just can't look at it anymore because when something of this discussion comes forward, it's always sidelined as least important. And maybe in the long picture, it's a perspective that it's an aesthetic that you either have or you do not have about your community and what kind of a world that you feel like you want to be living in. But there's got to be a balance between preservation and progress, because progress can be done in a thoughtful way or it can be done in a blunt way. And if each developer who comes forward is the one who's actually leading the city in finding out what kind of progress is going to be happening in our community, and not the public, or if the city council is not making the decisions in a more balanced way, there is going to be a loss of potential, a loss of creativity in the community, and a loss of conservation of things that other people at an earlier time period valued more highly.
Olivia, thank you for having this on the agenda, for listening to questions that are directed to you and comments that also, some are for you and some are for a much bigger audience. So I know that it's a little unfair to put that bigger picture out there like that. But I appreciate your willingness to hear us and to keep doing what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's a good segue into our next study session, which is going to be, I'm turning it back over to Kate as secretary, but we're certainly not done talking about process improvements, and we look forward to those conversations.
Thank you very
so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, we have the bylaws review and revision, section 106 proposal study session. There's also the historic preservation plan continued. I do want to mention that, we are able to go at whatever depth people prefer. We have the opportunity to abridge things or move to move them or continue. So those are options. So I will proceed to the table. Okay. So the bylaws review and revision in section 106 proposal, this is sort of a two-part study session. I'm mindful that it could get quite dense. So I do want us to, just sort of in terms of timeline, I think it would be best that we keep discussing this for probably multiple sessions. I think there's a lot here, even that is not encompassed within the cover sheet that is provided. I think there are other opportunities As I'm going through the bylaws, as you're going through the bylaws, I think that there are additional things that could be introduced. Of course, all of these are proposed potential options. So I think that there is a lot of room for conversation and a lot of room for work here. So I don't expect us to, build Rome in a day, essentially. Okay, so part one for the minor possible edits. And these are in tracked changes in your, I did just sort of print off the bylaws with the tracked changes turned on in red. So to give some clarity to these, adding just subsections to certain articles for clarity, particularly the one pertaining to meetings. So procedures, attendance, quorum, being A, B, C, and so on and so forth. Then I did under attendance, it references the Illinois statute regarding video or telephone conference. There was just a textual edit regarding how that statute is presented, and then it's actually Part A, not Part C. And then it had since been amended, so I was adding the full categories of that statute. So changing chairperson to chair, potentially, that just, it says chair in the zoning ordinance, it maintains neutrality. Changing he, she, or he or she to simply they as a potential edit. Then in Article 6, changing nominator/petitioner to just petitioner. Even in landmarking cases, you could still correctly, grammatically refer to someone as the petitioner. It just makes it less dense. And then, let's see. Article 6, number 17, adding clarifying information to the findings of fact language. I do want to read this one aloud. The commission, page 5 of the bylaws packet. The commission should include findings of fact as part of a motion, whether they are those drafted by staff of their own creation. We did also have a question recently at Zoning Board of Appeals that was, can we just riff? And the answer is yes. So, and then let's see. The last edit, the minor edit, would be on page 6 in records. A file of materials and determinations relating to each case or Section 106 review shall be kept by the secretary as part of the records of the commission. So, and that is something we now have a Section 106 folder in your commission folder. So everything we talked about the Florida Avenue project and then the Elm Street brick sidewalks is in a case file, as it would be if it were a landmarking case or a COA case. So those were the minor potential edits. So that's part one. If anyone has, these will remain in track changes until you approve them. And like I said, we can talk about these for as many meetings as you want. Open to thoughts, comments, whether they're here or by email.
I had one or two corrections,
Sure.
which surprising that I find them. I'm not usually the editor. Just your changing of the pronouns he and her to they.
Mm-hmm.
Very consistent. I think that's fine. I don't have anything problem with that, but you missed one.
Okay,
And,
which page?
And so that's on page 5 or 41 of the document, but it was on page 5 of the memo. Number 9 at the top. They just didn't, you just missed the change,
I see that. Thank you.
right? And on the same page, I have a question on number 16, which is the continuation or the reopening of a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like what it is saying here is that if the commission has continued the case to a later date, the public hearing may be reopened at the same meeting at the direction of the chair. So it was a little confusing about if you're going to be holding something at a future date you're not going to be reopening the discussion at the same meeting that we're sitting in. So I don't know what that, at the same meeting, I don't know which meeting is being the same meeting. So I had
Yeah, I think that
some
that's
confusion in the wording, maybe.
confusing. Is it, I think it's either confusing language that doesn't reflect its meaning, or maybe possibly if someone, is it,
What if we change that meeting to case? Could be at a different meeting if there's a continuation.
Hang on a second, though. You didn't complete
oh,
your
no,
sentence,
no,
so.
you're
is that-
okay.
is that-
I mean, is it, so the public hearings portion of the meeting comes before, like, study sessions. Is it possible, I genuinely question, is it possible to read this as saying, what if you get through, what if you move to continue the public hearing, to continue the case at another meeting, and then after you do some study sessions and you decide, hang on, I want to reopen the public hearing at this meeting? Is that what how would you read that?
I think that's what it says right now, but I think the question is that what everyone
Wants?
wants?
Okay. In other words, what is the intent and desire for that to reflect?
I'm confused like you are when it says same meeting. Same meeting a month later, or same meeting the night that it gets pushed back?
Night of that meeting, that you close the hearing and you reopen it. That's how it reads to me.
Okay.
And then reopening it, does that deprive the public of awareness that there's going to be further discussion? Or, I mean, would some people have gone home and then we're reopening it again? And some people maybe who are concerned about the case have left thinking that we were finished with our business. That's why I was
Good question.
asking about it.
That seems, I mean, I think it was probably intentional, just because why would you foreclose the opportunity to keep discussing something if everyone wanted to? But that point is maybe the reason not to do it, because you do want to give people the opportunity to attend the conversation. And if you shut it down and then when the room is cleared, then you choose to reopen it, that's dirty pool. So, if you close it, it seems like it should be closed until the next opportunity. I mean, that just seems like, and Olivia would probably know, the rule, but on this, but it seems like Public Meetings Act would kind of require the public has to be notified that something's happening, and if you've told them it's no longer happening, then you make it happen. That doesn't seem right.
And then the one more point was maybe it's a great thing, or maybe it's interesting to think about. But on 17, just below that one, the last point in the section talks about findings of fact, that we should include findings of fact as part of a motion, whether they are those drafted by staff or of their own creation. So it apparently allows the HPC member to create a finding of fact, or at least to bring one up.
Yes, and you are, as a commissioner, you are able to do that.
Okay, we're qualified. Darn, we're pretty smart too sometimes.
And I think I should also remove "there" from that sentence and clarify "or of the commissioner's creation" or the commission's creation, because maybe it's not so clear who "there" is, whether "there" is staff or "there" is the commission.
Or a commission member?
Yeah, thank you.
Going back to point 16, I mean, I just offered an opinion about that. Do we want to take a moment now to discuss, to say, like, should that be amended to say, for example, if the commission has continued the case to a later date, the public hearing may not be reopened at the same meeting period?
You know, I think
Or-
that this is intended, the more I read over this, I think when they're referring to same meeting, they're referring to the later meeting. That when it's reopened at that. That's what it's, to me, It doesn't say that, but I think that's what it's sounding like it's meaning to say. That when it's reopened at a later date than the public hearing. I don't know.
So like meaning reopened at that meeting, meaning the later date meeting? Yeah, it's really
At the later-
ambiguous.
Instead of saying it should be the later meeting.
But that should be obvious, right?
Well, it's too vague.
Sometimes a lot of things
We need clarification on that.
Yeah, okay.
We need new
Yeah.
language, I think.
What I could, I don't have those files in front of me, and off the top of my head, I don't know what dates they are specific to. We do have a bylaws folder that includes like previously voted on bylaws. I would be curious to see if this line has ever changed.
Yeah.
Like if I can find any evidence that it's been amended previously, what it maybe originally said would be helpful.
It may be something that flips and flops every time the revisions
Yes.
are done. Thank you.
And then if I could do one more question?
Sure.
I'm kind of getting my chance, right? So Article 10, or X, Roman numeral X, general provisions, commissioners shall not communicate with other commissioners outside the Historic Preservation Commission meeting for the purpose of influencing such commissioners to adopt a position on a matter then pending or reasonably expected to come before the commission. So I was wondering how this fits in with our previous practice of meeting with a partner so that two of us can come up with suggestions for creating projects that are, or renovating projects, or bringing up new wording for projects, which would be, which we have practiced in the past to some degree, and because that kind of planning is constructive to the process rather than the case, I would think it would not interfere with the Open Meetings Act, which this paragraph seems to be specifically concerned about.
Yeah, I think you can ask questions of, is it a case or is it business? Like,
And I thought that we were
yeah.
able to discuss with anything with one other individual, but not more than one. But now it's saying that you cannot, this is saying you cannot talk to anyone and only do your business in the council chambers, which really prohibits a lot of kind of collaborative interaction.
I mean, for example, if I was looking to understand a situation and I contacted Dennis and say, you know, how do you see this? It's true, by the language of this, you should not respond to my question because you would be doing this and knowing that the point is to influence me. I mean, I don't know, maybe that isn't. Maybe you're just answering my question and you're saying, well, this is my view and what I do with it is my own business. I mean, this feels like lobbying, like you can't write
What does
people
this
to
say?
lobby,
Matter
but
than pending.
Well, we bring up things that we want to study, and we're trying to build maybe a new rationale, or maybe we're going to be introducing a process, a different kind of process that we can use as a tool. And it seems like we should be able to talk about what the choices ought to be and what would be of use in at least one-to-one.
I wonder if this would not be a good thing to look at other examples of these kinds of guidelines for commissions and see if this is included in commission guidelines either for others in the city or for other historic preservation commissions, to see what's said there.
Right. If it's not an actual case, if it's just business of the city commissioners, we should be able to discuss things, it seems to me.
I think it would benefit from, yes, more specific language, looking to other HPCs, thank you. And then boards, and then also checking the specific language of OMA, because we have Open Meetings Act, the bylaws and the zoning ordinance, and they all sort of regulate you in slightly different ways, and they should refer to each other and be consistent, but they do have different goals. But maybe OMA informs how this can be edited, like how much leeway is in this. So yeah, I think those are great questions. How do other HBCs tackle this? What specific or different language would be beneficial and helpful? How does it relate to OMA and also the buddy system? And then how do we maybe keep, what intent do you want to keep with this that fits with additional regulations that also allows collaborative action in a specific way?
Right. And it may be if you refer to, like, in instances where it's a case that comes before you from the Planning Commission or from a nomination, that you would have different levels of communications ability. But you could spell that out, just because, even though we ought to be able to know them by, researching current ordinances, but I mean, it might be smart to just codify them and kind of simplify them and list them. In reference to this, you do this. In reference to that, it's okay to do these other things.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that. Okay. Any more commentary on part one?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. Okay, let's transition to part two, major potential edits. And so it's somewhat dense, and so I think a presentation is well served, but I also want to be upfront that this is by no means a set in stone thing. It is meant to be movable and discussable and editable. Okay. Notes here. Okay, so continuing our discussion that the zoning ordinance and the bylaws are separate, but sort of talk to each other. The historic preservation article of the zoning ordinance doesn't specify Section 106, and the bylaws can't create new powers of the commission. However, I do believe Section 106 would be folded underneath number 19 of the powers given to the commission to undertake any other action or activity necessary or appropriate to the implementation of its powers and duties or to the implementation of the purpose of this ordinance. So we are certainly covered by that. We could have a discussion of also just codifying it with another mention to specify Section 106. But in terms of bylaws specifically, they do tend to lean procedural, which would, I think, benefit us in our cases here. And we do have the ability to have multiple subsections, and so I think it's such a large topic that having an entirely new article where that would go, yet I don't have an answer. And then also what I think is most pressing to talk about today and what I want to focus on is this hypothetical subsection A for initial consultation invitation and or request for comment. That language is somewhat clunky still, so we can revise it so that it's most intelligible. I think it'd be good for it to reflect technical terminology, but also be publicly understandable, and that line can be hard to nail. Okay. Oops. This is sort of a graphic that I prefer for Section 106. We are actually somewhere in between step 1 and step 2 for this initial consultation invitation. The comments that and these are not official steps, this is just to visualize the Section 106 process. In terms of like the Florida Avenue, the consultant there was asking you all, what are your input, what are your comments, what historic properties do you identify, what resources do you identify? So they are reaching out to you for comment as a stakeholder, but then also part of this process of identifying historic properties. And so I think that as the initial steps of that, that's really important for us to nail down. Okay. A potential review timeline. Knowing that most of these requests for comments, and that in my experience, usually those emails come through with the subject line of the section 106, like the number, and then request for comment. Those are 30 days, and it's also my understanding that those are calendar days, though people might have different practices depending on what agency that they are from. So days 1 through 4, with a turnaround time of 4 days, this would be when myself, the secretary, would notify you of the invitation, review existing materials that we have in our records, and then request comment, providing a deadline of like, here's what we're looking at for turnaround. I do want to note that whether or not the email goes to Historic Preservation Commission at urbanail.gov, planning at urbanail.gov, or even kate.himmick at urbanail.gov, even if you've already seen it to HBC at Urbana, your commission email, I will still be sending that email out to you of here is your notice again of, and then also moving forward, should anyone happen to contact planning at Urbana or my personal city email for a request for comment, I would then request that they switch their email on file as the contact email to Historic Preservation Commission at urbanail.gov. Okay. Moving on to the next stage, commissioners return comments to the secretary. In the past, it's been about 10 days. That's tight. If we want to buy, this turnaround time is about 14 days. I think we can buy days, essentially, in the next stages where there's another potential stage where I would just complete a response letter introducing commissioner comments and simply being, thank you for reaching out. The Historic Preservation Commission would like to accept your invitation to be a consulting party. The following comments are attached and will receive the next day. This would be, the chair would then review this letter, and then there's some additional time for chair review, and then signature, and then the final reviewed response letter sent. So I think that there is wiggle room in that if you wanted to buy more days for review for yourselves. I do think, I went back and forth on what the purpose of a cover letter would be. Like, can't we just put all this in an email? I think having a cover letter sort of officializes it in a way of saying, like, here is the date this letter was sent in official business format. Yes, we are officially accepting your response as a consulting our role as a consulting party. Thank you for reaching out. Here are the following comments, which are included as attachment A, B, and C, so on and so forth. Knowing this potential timeline in detail, then here are some of the following actions that would be taken within each review period. So this 4-day period, what I would be endeavoring, and this is calendar days. So what calendar days, calculating 30-day response deadline and the Section 106 initial review timeline, conducting a review of the following materials within the area of potential effects, so providing you all with a list of possible National Register of Historic Places listed sites and districts, resources on the Hargis system through the SHPO website, local landmarks and local districts, historic surveys held at the department here, which is a big reason of why this survey audit is so crucial. And then also surveys conducted by PACA, a lot of which can be accessed at the Champaign County Archives at the Urbana Free Library. And then also in the email notifying the Historic Preservation Commission of the invitation and request and transmitting the information collected above. And then again, like, you may receive 2 emails. You may receive the initial email from, John Smith at FTA to the Historic Preservation Commission email, and then in 3 days' time, you may also see an email from me with some similar information, just packaged as giving you all specific timelines and then also materials that we hold on file. Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
Am I right? Am I right that the 30 days is calendar days? It's not business days.
I believe
It's
it to be
calendar
calendar days.
So, I mean, this really puts you under pressure because that's like a Friday and a Monday,
It's,
right?
yes, it is difficult. I think the 4 days, would be possible if we can get our historic surveys really nailed down. And that's partially why we're working so diligently on that. My main concern is my main concerns are keeping quite a bit of space for you all to go off and do your own thinking and have visual on the area if wanting to. So I'm really concerned about protecting those 2 weeks that you all have. I do, like I said, I think there's possible time to buy some days in the latter sections here. I'm also sensitive to the fact that, well, maybe the chair is traveling, or maybe there's a family emergency and I then contact the vice chair. Or it does just take administrative time sometimes to put together a Word document in business form. Like, it's not horrible, but that adds some time, especially if there are other cases going on or depending on what things are happening in the planning department. But I agree. I think 30 days I think part of the issue is that 30 days to produce a completed result in a way that respects multitudes of opinions and people's schedules and lives is just difficult. Because our case schedules, which is 35 days, we're just bringing that to you within the 35 days, and then you make a decision at the end of the 35 days. For this, it has to be done and reviewed at multiple steps before 30 days is even up. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does. Trent has a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you other commissioners feel like 2 weeks is what we need, or is that longer than we need to consider these and return comments? I'm just wondering if we dropped a couple days out of there, if that might make the rest of it a little more doable. Anyway, that's my question.
I feel like my open-ended question is, like, this is the initial response, and so the degree to which it has to be complete, it doesn't have to necessarily be.
No.
At this
it's-
point, it
yes.
does need to point a direction.
Mhm.
And so I do think that the timing looks okay for that. If the commissioners themselves are familiar with historic resources and have a little bit of something to go on already, which I think everyone kind of does, at least a little bit. I do think the thing that's missing, as you know, from our surveys is anything from, like, say, 1940 forward, or anything dealing with African American history, or, like, there are big gaps in what's already documented. So that's the issue in the 2 weeks for things that aren't already on the books.
Yeah, because this list here of resources, like you say, like, those are things that I can pull together from lists or maps relatively quickly. However, it's sort of a local community knowledge that may be more informative throughout that process than relying on only survey data from 1982 or something.
Any other, if you feel that that's workable, at least, and it will be more so later on, once that index is available, then great, because it could be just a matter of checking, is it here, what's here, like
Right.
that. I know that because of how people move around and all, I think of like 1 week as a reasonable basic unit, because it accommodates somebody being away and returning typically. But I also know that the way we operate is if somebody's unavailable, there is somebody else to do the work. So that if doing the step for days 1 through 4 wasn't reliant on the secretary, but if you were away, could be handled by someone, Evan, for example,
Yeah.
then there you go.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think that's a good question. I would need to, when I think the more I don't actually know, to your point earlier, Mr. Shepherd, I don't know the frequency, having only been here for 5 months. I don't know the frequency with which this happens. So I don't know if we're going to be able to think about all these things, ask these questions, adopt them, and then try them out often enough to then, in that same like momentum of bylaws revisions or even like staffing, like, maybe it's all, we get one every 2 years for the next decade. And then, I don't know. My point being, I don't know how often these happen to know if we are able to trial this at a frequently enough rate to really fine tune the dates. But I think that I could recalculate this, trying out weekly, because that is an interesting question of like, how does that work within the 30 days if we do rough weeks? Because that would be interesting to see.
Yeah, and it could be framed as 4 to 7 days. I mean, ideally 4, but if not 7, if we get it done before 30 days, great.
Right.
When we were down on Florida Avenue, we knew that we couldn't wait till the following week. We jumped right in. So then the softness, that additional time for chair to review, softness could come from there. It could be 2 to 5 days, something there, so that you're robbing Peter to pay Paul there. But if the chair is already involved in communication with the secretary during that 6-day period or a week period, that could just be a week period, then it's kind of like double checking. The
Yep.
chair in this process has a responsibility then, is being given the responsibility to to make the conclusion, in a sense, to author to sign the letter on behalf of the commission, given the feedback. So we understand that it's not about going back and having everybody weigh in again on this initial pass. So it just, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also it's sensitive to timing as well. It's much more difficult to get everyone's signatures in 5 days than it is to get one person's review and signature in 5 days. And then that's directly informed by sort of an experience with a high-profile case in South Bend in which we were communicating with Indiana SHPO about something and had to work very quickly to get anything done. And it was, we don't have time for everyone to sign this and mess around with the digital signatures and reviewing the document, send it to the chair. So, of course, not the same situation, but in terms of respecting everyone's time. Okay. So the second half of this potential timeline, this actions by the secretary, collect individual commissioner comments through email. This will discuss about whether email or a commission discussion, how that timing works out in the next slide. But if it is to go through email, of course, using responsible practice to comply with OMA guidelines, that would be responding individually, compiling a cover letter to transmit all received comments and indicate acceptance of consulting party status. If wished, you would assume you would wish to do that for most instances, and then coordinate with the chair to review the cover letter prior to transmission. Okay, I think this is a heavy slide. So when we first started thinking about how would we standardize a process like this, we immediately thought of the sheet which you were given earlier of the case schedule, in which that's a 35-day schedule. And how that works essentially is most of those 35 days is staff processing time, in which we have all of the internal deadlines for planner needs to get memo to principal planner gets memo to director, so on and so forth. And then your action actually happens on the 30th. Like, you're reviewing it at the meeting date, and then you produce an action at the meeting date. You're welcome to continue the hearing, but sort of things end at that 35th day. Versus with the Section 106 comments, you're actually, providing comment in the middle of that review period, in the middle of those 30 days, so that we can get it done before the 30th day. So we initially had thought of this meetings-only review schedule, in which the review or first noticing of the commission would just be at an HBC meeting. And that was somewhat convenient with the Florida Avenue Section 106, because the individual managing that case had quite a large caseload, and it had actually fallen to the bottom of her list, and she was coming back to ask us, hey, by the way, I haven't heard from you. And we said, hold on, pause, let's take it to the commission. So the timing of that worked out, in which the first time you heard about it was at a commission meeting. Because the 35-day meeting schedule doesn't always fit with a 30-day response timeline. There are certain months in the calendar year in which you would literally have to call a special meeting to be first noticed at a commission meeting. There are also all months in the calendar year have a chunk of time where the established turnaround time, the potential turnaround time we talked about, poses significant challenges for feasibility, if not just impossibility to meet within that time, if we're just telling you about it in a packet like we normally would a COA or a landmarking case, things that get legally noticed in that manner. So what's the potential solution for this is to do somewhat of a combined email meeting review, where we are sort of relying more heavily on digital communication. It is the nature of the world and the beast of technology. This would happen essentially, the email would go out within that 4-day turnaround time. We would request commissioner comments within 14-ish days. But depending on where that request for comment in the month is received, it would still be talked about at the commission meeting. Whether it would be, let's say it happens at the very beginning, like it happens the day after a commission meeting and it happens to be a long month and the 30 days is entirely up by the next meeting, it would still be noticed in the staff report so that the public is aware that this is an action that you take, that you do, that you have purview over, that if they have comments, they're welcome to write to you, to be transferred all along as the process progresses. Let's say you meet in the middle of the month, and actually, you know what? This is a better slide to talk about. And you have this slide and then also a printed full-size PDF of this in your packets. Let's say it happens somewhere in the middle of the month, and this is a rough example because it is this month, and this month happens to be, there's about 5 weeks between meetings from July to August. Let's say there is time in the schedule for you to actually discuss things at an HBC meeting, at a commission meeting, before your comments are, quote, due or, for return. That's also possible. I think with the nature of what that looks like is highly variable depending on what day things are received. The intent, though, of it being that the majority of communication would happen through email, but it would always be discussed at an HBC meeting, whether in a staff report or a study session, so that people it's a matter of public record at that point.
Can I chime in? So a previous practice that was held by former planning division staff because of lack of staffing was to cancel meetings that there were no cases being heard. And so I think we've deviated, that was applied to all planning division commissions. So that was Historic Preservation Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Design Review Board and Plan Commission. But we've pledged, I think, at least with the Historic Preservation Commission, to keep meetings as regularly scheduled. So I think just to inform this conversation, the assumption would be that meetings would not be canceled unless there was a lack of quorum or it fell on a holiday and needed to be rescheduled. So just want to add that to the conversation if that helps with your evaluation of these sort of timelines and durations, is you can assume that the meeting schedule as posted at the beginning of the year would be followed, unless a lack of quorum was the case.
Thank you. Yeah. Great.
And that is happy to take revisions, comments, concerns, either in person now as a conversation, or if you have a thought at 3 a.m.
So the communications via email would be sent to us, to our board emails.
Correct.
See, all right, so, all right, that's great for some, I think for staff it's really handy, but for those of us who don't typically look at a board email unless we know that there's something coming up, I mean, I don't look at it every day. I don't even look at it every week necessarily. So I'm not really constantly checking my HPC, because it's like I've got 4 emails and I'm not constantly looking at this one. So it would be super handy if the secretary would tell me, would send it to my primary personal email that I need to go to my HPC email to see something that is required, for, to be aware of. Now that would be useful to me,
Yes.
but it's not useful to you necessarily.
I think that there are a variety of reasons why we want to discontinue or not do that. One of which being FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. If commission business is conducted through your personal email then becomes subject to FOIA requests. And someone has to sort through everything that is in your email inbox to figure out what's relevant to a FOIA request and what's not relevant to a FOIA request.
So it's my responsibility to just keep checking my city email constantly.
And that is to protect your rights as a citizen, yes.
I'm open to suggestions.
Well, I was kind of in that situation myself, and I spent some time, a good part of a morning, and I got it set up so that I've got the city email on my telephone. And a little red dot appears there, and a little noise. So then I can go and I can read it on my computer, or but I've got the app that tells me without having to check. And I'd be glad to help you get into in a similar situation, so you're getting a little, oh, there's that little red notification, I've got a message, so that we don't get bogged down with, oh, I don't know. Anyway, I'd be glad to help you with that if you'd like.
So I think there's workarounds. I just am.
There are definitely workarounds. I mean, like all of my emails come to one platform.
Oh.
And so you can feed your email into one interface. Also, I think, I mean, in terms of FOIA as a public employee, my understanding is that any communications about a public subject in that capacity are FOIAble regardless of platform. So I think the main issue there isn't that it protects your Gmail. It's for the convenience of city staff to juggle different people's email, or you change your email. It's like, as city commissioners, you either mechanically can check it every day, or Trent can help you. There are definitely workarounds, but yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I guess I've got homework,
I'm
because I don't even care for Gmail.
sorry to chime in again. I just wanted to provide a little bit more information. I've been talking with our IT department, and something that we can offer, I'm workshopping the details right now, is potentially to have office hours for an hour before a commission meeting. So from 6 to 7, with the commission meeting starting at 7, where a member of the IT department will come in for overtime hours and actually be here in the council chambers. And if you bring your laptop and your phones or whatever devices you'd like, they'll be able to help you get set up. So that's something that we're currently working on right now as well, just to ensure that everybody has access to that resource as well. So more details to come.
Cool.
And I spent, the woman in the IT, what's her name?
Linda? Linda Taverna.
Linda was extreme, I couldn't have gotten it all straightened out without her help. And she was very willing to spend time with me and get it set up. And there were a few hurdles too, so.
Yeah, I've worked with the IT department before, and they're fine. But my excitement to do it is not as avid as some.
Well, I didn't want to do it either.
I had just a couple, thank you for this. I think it makes perfect sense, the combined review makes sense. Even if you fall into a cycle where everything has to happen through email, like even the notification at a public meeting after that 30 days is, I think, incredibly significant and important. Just for the record, I can say that having just been out of the country a couple of times, the current setup of the email doesn't seem to allow logging in from beyond the United States of America. And so there do seem to be some kind of impediments, if you like, to routine email checking or being digitally connected, that, I mean, I'm sure there's a workaround for that. But, you know, the idea that it's very easy to stay digitally connected, there are some firewalls in the system.
Yes, and we'll speak with IT about how we can best navigate this if email, and I think having a combined email meeting review, I mean, it does put greater reliance on technology. There are issues with technology as we experience daily, as we experience with trying to remote people in. So we can certainly have a sit down with IT about what the implications about this would be and how we can preempt them or predict what might be an issue.
Yeah, I'd have Angela Urban did chime in that because the commission email no longer forwards, there is a little bit of just a complication there.
Okay, we'll add that to the list.
Email makes your job easier in compiling responses, right? Because you're not taking notes
It's
on
true.
verbal statements like as one does with minutes. So
What
having
I
it in
did
that
for the
format is,
Yes, what I did for the past ones, I literally turned your email into a PDF and put a title on it that said attachment A, attachment B, attachment C. It speeds up the process of compiling commissioner comments into something intelligible for the staff person who's working on it at a different agency.
So I had just one question, observation, something to think about, which on I think the second slide of the new bylaws article proposal about creating new powers. I'm not sure that creating new powers is even the way to think about. I do think that really laying out procedures when these requests come in is really helpful. I think certainly, thinking retrospectively, if the commission is named as a consulting party, none of this applies because we've been named as a party by someone else, and so we don't need new powers.
Yeah.
Because we've been asked to serve a role by someone outside of the city. And so probably something that distinguishes between those kinds of
Yeah.
things is helpful.
No, I
in a way.
agree with that.
Yeah.
I think maybe I should have been more clear in this slide that it's not. My intent would not have been to create. Yeah, I think create new powers is perhaps misleading. We hope that the bylaws and the zoning ordinance are in communication as much as possible. And if the bylaws have an entire article, which may shape up to be a quite long article that talks about Section 106 reviews, but the zoning ordinance never once ever says Section 106, could create confusion in the future. And so it would be more so, the question would be, is it useful to codify this in both documents? And that would require a text amendment of the zoning ordinance, which is a more in-depth process.
Thank you for that.
any other questions, comments? No? Thank you for that. It's terrific.
Great, thank
Very
you
helpful,
all.
great step forward.
And would you like to continue this study session at a future meeting? Or do we have further question or further input on that?
I think it would be helpful to continue this at a future meeting, especially when our chair can be present.
Okay. And then I believe, Evan, our next meeting, if you would not mind looking at the dates for the next couple meetings.
Oh, I've got a question. Is it the staff or the director of the chair of the HPC that decides what topics appear on the agenda of each meeting?
Sure, I can answer that question. In the past, the practice had been, and it's sort of the nature of Historic Preservation Commission versus Plan Commission and ZBA and Zoning Board of Appeals. Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals operate mostly on a case basis. And the practice in the past had been to cancel meetings if there was no legally noticed case. As we know, Historic Preservation Commission has many different topical subjects that are discussed in study sessions, in staff reports, things that are ongoing, and it might be better to compare it to something like BPAC, Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which has a lot of topical subjects that they deal with, a lot of things that are ongoing, continued conversations. We would like to, I think our priority for this meeting had been the bylaws review and also the Section 106 proposal. I was also out of the office for roughly 2 weeks on medical leave. So this was our priority, but a priority going forward, in addition to continuing this, would be agenda setting process. And so in the past, it has been primarily staff-based. I think we envision, we don't have that fully fleshed out yet, but we envision it being a more collaborative process.
I would suggest using the format of the city council. Two members of two different wards agreed that they'd like to have a topic on the agenda. They can place it on the agenda, or they can approve a presentation, 10-minute presentation before the commission or the city council. So two people petitioning, two individual council members petitioning should be able to put the agenda. It may be not the immediate agenda, but at least a future agenda.
Thank you. That's a good idea.
Sounds reasonable. I mean, I know that some of the topics we were talking about are on the agenda because we asked for them to be on the agenda during a meeting. So that's another way, it just arising right out of this group in a session like this. So
Right.
Both would be legitimate.
Yes, so the next meeting will be Wednesday, August 5th, followed by September 2nd, followed by October 7th.
Okay. So we have the opportunity for a motion to continue this study session at a future meeting.
I move that we continue this study session regarding bylaws review and revision and Section 106 proposal to our next meeting on August 5th.
Does anyone second the motion? Yes.
I'll second that motion.
We vote?
Voice vote, yeah.
All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 Opposed, please say no. And the motion has been approved.
Okay, thank you. We will continue study session August 5th. Okay.
I'm so sorry for keep chiming in. I'm really trying not to, but something that we can do in that additional study session, and we don't necessarily have to make a decision right now, but Kate could prepare a redlined version of the bylaws similar to what you've seen for those minor edits for those more major edits related to Section 106. So that could be a future iteration that you all see and review. It doesn't just have to be in a PowerPoint presentation and discussion. It could actually then get translated into red line bylaw revision. So just wanted to float that so that you all can have an expectation for what could come as future action, if that's helpful.
Great idea. Anyone object to that? No? Sounds great. Sorry to add to your.
Yes, thank you, Lou.
Thanks for adding to your work.
No, that's very doable. We
Okay.
we can
Okay.
accomplish that.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. Then we are last on the agenda, last in the study session agenda is the historic preservation plan continued. This is a continuation from a previously distributed study session document at the June 3rd meeting. Again, our priority had been the Section 106 proposal and bylaws review, but there were some open-ended questions that were posed at the previous month's study session on this topic regarding beginning to brainstorm for historic preservation plan goals. So I wanted to reintroduce that as a topic of conversation. If anyone would like the floor or would like to offer additional thoughts.
So I do think that going parallel with the discussion of kind of technical revisions to processes are a larger establishment of a new set of goals for historic preservation. I would love to see the commission have the ability to kind of talk through that. I really appreciate bringing in those comparative plans, which I looked through. And it was interesting to think about what seemed to be applicable or not. And I would love the ability to do to engage with neighborhoods and neighborhood leaders about their perception of preservation and what it may or may not serve in those contexts. And it's become really clear that, like, you know, and this is not a surprise at all, that like historic preservation is like needlessly complicated in so many ways. And so trying to think about how to talk about preservation in ways that are useful and interesting to the community, so that we can actually think about not just the commission's goals, but what community goals are for preservation, I think is a huge, huge need. So if there's an ability to dovetail that conversation with other conversations that are happening, to include it, say maybe the commission doesn't lead that conversation, but those questions get folded into something else that's happening. I think that there's a huge need for that collaborative, synthetic way of thinking about preservation and its relationship to neighborhood planning decisions that are made about things like transportation, and so that it doesn't sit out on its own by itself, but is actually considered to be really integral to all of these other conversations that happen. How that happens is obviously really complicated, but I would love for that to be a part of the thinking about a historic preservation plan, is how do we make this more integrated into the way other city processes work as well. I feel like that's an opportunity for staff to like help us out, since we don't know everything that's happening.
Other comments? Maybe Angela, I don't know if she's texting about that.
Actually, yes, thank you for that. So Angela, let's see, she had mentioned at a previous meeting an interest in applying for a CLG grant in the next round. And there was a need to check on if we were allowed to do so, given that we have a currently active CLG grant.
Yes, it is possible to do more than one. However, the state deadlines and grant structure is slightly strange because they're distributing federal funds at a state level. And those federal funds are on a federal fiscal year. So when I checked the Illinois SHPO's website on CLG matching grants, the fiscal year 26 grant deadline closed April 17th. It was opened March 2nd and it closed April 17th. And that grant period was for October 1st, 2025 to September 30th, 2027. The start dates of those grants would be a couple months after the application's opened. So like the one we currently have out, which by the way, our audit is directly related to the CLG grant that we have outstanding. because we want to be responsible users of money that has been allocated. That was awarded to us March 24th of 2025. The start date of that was June 2nd, 2025, and it closes June 1st of 2027. So we need to spend all that money down by June 2027. It needs to be closed out. It needs to be completed. Like, staff hours have to be devoted to getting that grant up to standard for us to be able to maintain a good standing with state grant recipients. So what I assume from that information, there is not a fiscal year 2027 posted on the Illinois SHPO website. What I assume from that information, inferring from our previous grant awards and then also what had been just passed in several months, is that the fiscal year 27 grants will open in March of 27 and then be awarded in June of 27 for a 2-year grant period. So there is, I think, the possibility that we can discuss that. I do want to state that it is our hope as staff to prioritize the grants that the grant we have out, just in terms of staffing time and being able to sort through surveys and put good use to very talented interns and time from other locations, and then also give the time necessary to devote to process and to Section 106 process or to bylaws revision or things like a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. So I think it's possible to have discussions towards a preservation plan and be brainstorming it, but I think we have to close out items before we jump into very, very deep waters.
I do think that for the commission to engage productively in a preservation plan like this, like buddy system piece that we were just talking about, and like, are we unduly influencing each other, probably needs to be resolved, because it would require people to work
I
in
think we have lots
pairs
of
to
process
try to
questions.
think about different parts of that before bringing it back to the group. So probably some resolution there would be helpful.
Thank you for that, yeah.
To that end, I think it will be useful for us to make decisions about sections and who will pair up or work individually to steward a section forward. Not just saying we amend the sections that exist, but like, what sections should there be?
Right.
But as part of that, I really appreciate what was said earlier about, well, many contexts, but framing the fact that our current document doesn't serve us well, in part because, as we just witnessed, people, generally speaking, don't know what historic preservation means. They don't know what adaptive reuse means. I was surprised to realize that some people think adaptive reuse means restoring something to its original condition. So, but I'm familiar with this conundrum from landscape. It's a word that everyone uses in their own way. So to talk about landscape, everyone needs to be able to articulate their working definition. How would you talk about historic preservation if you couldn't use the words historic preservation? And the idea that I want to present to everybody, but Kate was touching on, is these documents are typically written with the aim of defining something, like, in a sense, generally for all time, and that has privileged certain perspectives that are hegemonic in that way. And I really like the idea of us developing a document that's a living document with working definitions that are specific to our context. So what we choose to practice as this commission may be different from a different part of the world, a different context, a different value system, but the framework that's been given to us through Imagine Urbana and others is pretty clear about how our work could be oriented. So So to produce a document that shows other people what we understand by this work, but also how it fits with their initiatives, I hope will have great value. Other comments, questions? So, so in terms of a next step for, I mean, this is recirculated and it's come up again kind of late in the meeting and we're all drooping. And so for going forward, I mean, Kate, you've been saying like we should hold off on certain things until we've made some decisions about procedures. But between now and a future meeting, a next meeting or the meeting after that, what work could we outline, undertake to serve an expeditious advance of this project? Is it,
So I personally would love everyone to actually read our current historic preservation plan and like circle the parts that they like and X out the parts that they think are outdated. Just like as the first, like just know what's in that plan.
so do the assignment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
And do you
Sorry.
want, and should we, and then bring that to the next discussion of this so that everyone has the source document in front of them. I X'd out a lot. I was really like, but I did, that before, months ago, a year ago. So do the assignment, this first assignment, read it. So before we buddy up, read it and mark it up so that what you like, what you dislike, and any comments. And I would want to add to that just again like that question of what should historic preservation mean in our current context. So don't try to define it as an absolute, but my working definition of landscape is different from your working definition of landscape. It's based on a lot, but being able to articulate that helps us communicate and guide our work. So if we could come to a shared working definition, then great. Yeah? Okay, everyone has an assignment.
I had one thing to
Yeah?
comment about. I've just been amazed at how long, seems like if I look up the preservation plan for Peoria, Illinois, it's 160 pages long with charts and I've just been ours is long, and I don't know if any of them are shortened to the point, but I won't say I'm overwhelmed, but I just can't, it just seems like they're all very long, and
You like the big ideas but not the little ideas? You like the big tasks but not the little tasks?
I think you could get to some points. You're Xing out parts. Do we have to add lots of new ones?
No, that's what I'm saying. We might,
X out some parts, but, and like I look at the Iowa City one, it's, I don't know, 100 and I don't know how many pages long. I'm just astounded that everybody's got these long ones, and maybe it's all because of all the pictures. Maybe that makes them long. But pictures are great. They give good examples, but
So maybe it's important to just like also circle the part you're interested in. Because I think like part of the goal is if we're working collaboratively, to have people work on the parts that they care about and they're most interested in, instead of having everybody have to like write, like each of us write 160 pages or something. No one wants to do that. But if you can identify in these documents, like, oh, this is the part that I am most interested in, I most care about, that might be helpful too.
sounds great. Yeah?
Okay, perfect. In terms of a schedule for that, let's see, the August 5th, we have the continued study session for bylaws. Is there a preference to skip a month?
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will move that we continue the conversation about the Historic Preservation Plan update to the September 7th meeting.
Second.
Yep, 2.
Or sorry, September 2nd.
Sorry, second. Thank you, all these numbers.
Sorry.
What? Out of order.
Yeah, okay. I will move that we continue the discussion of the Historic Preservation Commission bylaws to this September 2nd meeting. Thank you.
Do we have a second
I
on
would
that?
second that motion.
Oh, yes, sorry. I move that we continue the discussion of the Historic Preservation Commission plan, Historic Preservation Plan, to the September 2nd meeting.
Great. And do we have a second on the motion?
Oh, yeah, second.
Wait,
He did it.
okay. All right, Dennis, thank you very much.
And
Thank
I withdraw
you.
my second to your original motion.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, everybody. Are there any announcements? No. So we can adjourn the meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Sorry. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, so all of those in favor, please say yes.
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 Thank you. All of those opposed, please say no. Motion has been approved. Thank you. Okay, there are no announcements. And then, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. The meeting is closed at 9:47 PM.
Thank you. Late night, everyone. Appreciate all your work.
Thanks. Thank you, Angela. Boy. I know this is an emergency alarm, but I keep thinking it's to take my pulse.
It does look like that.